Hey everyone, this is Uri Peleg for Guerrilla Poker. In this video I'm going to be reviewing a crazy hand played at 10-20. We'll go through almost the entire hand, stop, ask you guys what you would have done. We're going to make this a bit more interactive, and then we're going to dive into a more technical solver analysis where we try to understand what's going on and why, and kind of try to put the two together into a complete picture. This is a BVB hand. Jaser raises to 3 big blinds, gets called, 10-4, 3 two-tone, kind of unassuming flop, goes check check, 7 of spades turn, 3/4 bet more or less, and a call, 7 of clubs river. And you guys might be asking, why am I showing you this tiny pot? But it goes check, and Nacho makes an overbet, roughly 1.5x pot, and Jaser shoves. Imagine you're in Nacho's shoes. I think the very natural hand type for him to have is just trips, just a 7, like 7-5, 7-6, 7-8, you know, a million kickers you could have for your 7. You river trips, you go for this big bet, you get check shoved on, and the question is, what would you do? So I want you guys to pause the video and think and answer. Would you always call, never call, or randomize, like call a third or half the time or 75% of the time, and try to explain why. Remember, this is an in-game situation, so want you to think about it. Post your answer either for yourself or in the comments, and I will show you results. Alright, so this is a sim for 10-4, 3 two-tone BVB with 2k and L rake, so ranges might be a bit wider than you see in other sims. Flop, we see that the preferred bet size is a 1/3 pot bet, but it's not getting used at a very high frequency. Because the board is so dynamic and so many cards are going to change the effectiveness, and there's a lot of money behind, the out of position player doesn't have enough of an equity advantage to really put too much money out there. In these kind of spots, what you'll see solver doing is actually mixing with almost every single hand type. There's no hand that's always betting or always checking, but you can see hands have a preference. So jacks or 3s or 4s have a big preference for betting, while if we go for a hand like I guess ace 8, ace 7, ace 6, these would have a preference for checking. And looking at which hands have a preference for which action and thinking about why can be pretty educational and help you guys play better. So flop goes check check, turn 7 of spades, Jaser bet with a 75% sizing, which we see among the sizing choices I have is the most common one. Betting starting out with roughly 7x, 10s, over pairs are checked, bunch of straight draws. Straights here would be hands with a 5, a 6, or stuff like jack 9, jack 8, 8, 9. Never gonna see something super trashy bluff in these kind of spots. So if we go like, what's the trashiest hand we could possibly have in terms of equity? See something like queen deuce, and we see queen deuce no draws, just not betting. Facing a bet, the in position player is going to continue almost any pair, almost any draw, some high card hands. Definitely all the 7s. Okay, so we get to the river, 7 of clubs. The out of position player should still keep betting quite a lot, even though the 7 makes in position the nuts or trips. That's not a huge percent of in positions range. We can see this here in Range Explorer really quickly, where if we go to in positions range, we look at trips, you can see that trips is 15% of his range, so definitely significant. We can't go and bomb like were we to go all in, for example, on the river with something like jacks. You can see that the in position player could afford to call us almost exclusively with trips, and then our equity would be, as they say, in a dumpster. But you can still keep betting. 15% of his range is not enough to slow you down. A hand like jacks is still very, very heavy equity favorite and definitely wants to keep betting. But hand played check. In position, here I gave him 3 sizings. He can shove 75 or 150. 150 was the size used. And we can see that the trips do go 150 fairly often. The low kickers, like 7 deuce, is going 150 almost always. 7-5 also most of the time, 7-8 most of the time, 9-7 most of the time, 10-7 the boat going a bit smaller. Are all the trips going 150? The answer is no. If we look at Queen 7 and King 7, these actually prefer going a bit smaller. So hands are mixing, it's not super important, but why the preference for the low trips going big and the medium trips, we'll call these, going small, and then the top trips going big. If we look at villain's response when we go small, villain is gonna check raise us with two types of hands. One is 7-5 and one is A7. When we go bigger, he's gonna check raise just with A7. When I have 7 deuce, I'm not interested in getting the 7-5 check raise. I'd rather have King 7, Queen 7, like the more in between ones. To me it makes sense that when I have bad trips, I don't want to get check raised, and when I have better trips, I do. And when I have the best trips, I just want to get a lot of money in. Okay, enough with that. We'll look at the check raising range. Check raising range for out of position is going to be A7 for value. As far as bluffs, Ace 4, Ace 5, Ace 6, pocket aces. Now, why would those be our bluffs? If you think about it, when I check shove with A7, the in-position player is going to always call me with his A7, and the rest of his trips will have a bluff-catching decision. So I want blockers that minimize the chance of the other player having A7 and maximize the chance of him having one of the other trip combos. The best way to do that is to hold an ace or even two aces, and that's why you see all the hands check shoving having an ace almost as a bluff. We see in position's response on the river, which is to always call A7. And with the rest of the trips, it's kind of mixed, with them calling between 30 and 50%, let's say average of 40-42% calling with trips. Or we could ask Range Explorer, how often do you call with trips? It would be 50% including A7, so probably 40% without A7. Now, why are trips folding? I mean, your value range is just trips. He's shoving supposedly A7, so obviously you have to fold some of them. Want to go back, look at the shoving range and show kind of the importance of blockers. When we check shove something like aces, this is winning us 1 to 2 big blinds. While calling aces would be a pure bluff catcher, the removal effects actually work a bit better than that. Something like ace 4 can win you a tiny bit. But what about if you shove something completely unrelated, with no ace, and in that sense no relevant removal? If we look at something like 8-9, shoving would lose 13 big blinds. So having the ace, really crucial for check shoving. Even in this sense, while we have an ace, we would also want the other card to kind of unblock the 7s with the weak kickers, which is why ace 10 works nice, aces work nice, but some random like ace 8, where you block some 7-8s which you would like him to have. Bluffs for in position are going to be hands like 8-9 and Jack 8 and 8-6, so you really don't want to have those low kickers if possible, which is why ace 8 is also losing, or 8-9 is losing so much, while something like Queen Jack losing a bit less. Now, I'm going through this in an organized way because the concepts apply across the board. And we're seeing huge EV jumps based on blockers, and that's because when you look at the calling range for in position, it's just 8 combos. This is always the case with huge bets on the river, where you shift things just a little bit, like you block half a combo, it's a huge EV jump for you. The pot's huge, and just half a combo would affect the calling frequency by like 4%, which is, yeah, big difference. So Nacho did call, and they showed up with these hands. Jazer has Jack 9, Nacho has Jack 7. Now, we've seen in our analysis that Jack 7 should mix calling and folding, roughly 40-60 or so. And Jazer's shove should be losing, right? You really don't want to have the 9, and you really want to have an ace, preferably not the Jack as well. So, in theory, a bad shove. Shoving Jack 9, with Jazer suits is losing 6 big blinds. But Pio's opponent is reacting in a perfectly balanced way. And in practice, this spot is, after the bet, it's already 37 big blinds. After you shove, it's going to be 130 big blinds. If I were in Jazer's shoes, you know, you have some reads on the other guy, there's metagame in your image and stuff like that, and there are a bunch of spots where if you check shove here, the other guy will just believe you and he won't call any 7 except a7, or call very, very infrequently, and then this bluff is going to be massively winning and really, really good. Like, all you need to do to make the bluff winning is make the other guy, for example, fold his low kicker 7s always, and have him call with just boats and king 7. See, he's folding 10% extra. Now the jack 9 shove that before was losing is now winning 7 big blinds, and of course it can get even more extreme than this. On the other hand, there might be some guys who call you with every 7. If people are calling you with every 7, I don't need the solver to explain how bad that ends up being for you. The takeaways I'd like you guys to have from this, from a strategic standpoint, are first of all how important blockers are on the river and how you want to interact with the range that the other guy will call, but also the range that he's bluffing, and both things are important. Barring anything else, this is a very good tool to decide which hands to even consider some crazy bluff with. But more important than this, I want the takeaway to be that you can't judge a play based on purely PioSOLVER, because everything is so sensitive to assumptions. And this check raise on the river against this particular player, and we see him call jack 7, so it's probably not brilliant, but it's not necessarily as bad as it looks. And if you ever have a reason that's like a physical read or a timing tell to make you feel he's a bit weak, it's more than enough reason to go for these plays and not just stick to theoretically correct poker. You really want to step outside of the box whenever you have a reason to, because with blockers and everything, with all due respect to them, they're worth 6 big blinds, but if he's calling king 7 plus, or if he just doesn't have a 7 because of some read, you know, just go for it and win the money. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.